So, if you're going to be buying a firearm that you maybe aren't familiar with, one of the big questions you should ask is how much of a pain is this thing going to be to take apart and clean out? There's a reason why AKs and ARs reign supreme. On this AR-10, this beautiful AR-10 from Armalite, I pull a pin, she pops open, I have access to all of the internals. It took me a whole 2 minutes to get in here and wipe all the crud out. Same thing with an AK, right? This rail comes off 10 seconds, if that. There's a button to push here, and then this rail cover pops out. I pull a spring out, and then I have access to the barrel to run wipes through it or a bore snake. 10 minute. 10 minute. That's all it's going to take. Uh, you start getting into these cool, exotic little custom rifles. I was going to do a video on this. I took this RIA Import TM22. I took this thing to failure. It's about 1,100 rounds. And then we started getting double feeds. And eventually one of the 22 LR bullets actually blew up in the chamber. So at 1,100 rounds, this thing becomes pretty much inoperable. So now I have to take this little thing apart and clean it. Okay? You know, not the worst thing in the world. It's not going to be the most complicated thing in the world, but it is going to be somewhat of a pain in the dick, right? I wish this was an AR setup. I wish this just had a pin right here and a pin right here, and I could just pop this pin out, open this bad boy up, and clean the internals out. That's not going to be the case. I'm going to be standing here for 30-40 minutes looking up instructions, taking every little piece of this apart, cleaning it out, and putting it back together. And every, 800 rounds, I'm going to have to do that with this rifle. And it's not going to be a nice and easy process. So I think that is something very important that I don't see gun tubers talking about. They talk about a gun's performance. They talk about a lot of things, but they don't really talk about how much of a pain it is to take these things apart and clean them. Again, AKs and ARs reign supreme because they are so easy to maintain. You can do it in the field. It takes 5 to 7 minutes to pull the bolt out, the charging handle, wipe it down, and put it back in. I mean, these things were absolutely filthy, right? And all of this also applies to pistols. As a matter of fact, the smaller the firearm is, the smaller the spaces are inside of it, the less grit and dirt you need in there to mess up a tolerance. So a bigger, larger gun with more interior space can typically take more dirt and grime before it builds up to such a level that it starts messing with the tolerances and with the performance of the firearm. So when we get into handguns, when we get into tiny pistols, you got to take those things apart all the time and clean them. There is a good solid reason why most of my carry guns are FN. FN is absolutely awesome as far as the cleanup goes. You rack the slide, pull a lever, and the gun comes apart. No lining dots up, no hammering little pins out. It's very nice and simple, and that's part of the reason why I keep messing with FN. I really like all their guns, and they all have the same system in place where you're racking it, pulling a lever, and the thing comes apart, and you can clean it within minutes. I have a Bull Armory pistol here. Thing shot great, it's awesome, but when it's time to take this thing apart, I'm going to have to learn how to do it. There's going to be a small learning curve. There are some dots to line up, and then there's a pin to drive out, and then the thing comes out, and then to put it back together, you got to line those dots up and put that pin in. That's such a pain in the dick compared to rack the slide, pull a lever, and she came apart. So all of this makes a difference because you're going to be cleaning these things out. At a certain point, you just can't shoot these guns anymore once they get so dirty. For this particular 22 LR, it's around 1,100 rounds. I think 1070 is what I have on this thing. I did slightly spray it out and just clean the chamber out at about 500 rounds, and I ran a bore snake through it. Aside from that, I know that this rifle is going to have to be cleaned out before I ever put 1,000 rounds on it again. And hey, for some rifles, that might take you an hour as opposed to 5 minutes. Literally, pull a pin, pops out, pull this out, wipe everything down, get everything clean inside of here that you can, run a bore snake through it, and this is clean in under 10 minutes. We're going to have to see how long it takes to clean this one out. It ain't going to be no 10 minutes. I guarantee you that. Anyway, something to think about when you're out shopping for your next firearm. Really think about, how much effort it's going to take the thing apart, to clean it and put it back together. And if the guy at the shop doesn't know, it's not a good sign. It is not a good sign. Like if you ask the guy behind the counter, how do I take this apart and clean it? And he starts having to look up instructions online, it's not a good sign. Again, this is what draws me to the FN pistols because they all come apart with the same lever. I wish I had one here to show it. So just keep that in mind. You can't go wrong with an AR because of the pins that make it so easy to just pop them open and clean them. Same thing with the AK. All other rifle variants, I have no idea. I don't know how easy it is to clean a FAL or like an MP5. Have no idea. I stick to these because I know I can clean these out very quickly, and I'm going to be doing that often, right? I mean, this is something that you're going to do pretty much after every single one of your range trips. And again, I think this is more important for a pistol. So keep that in mind when you are shopping for a pistol. You might want to have a good idea of how to take the thing apart and put it together before you ever pay for that pistol. Just IMO. Have an awesome day, everybody. Man, I got a mess to clean in here.